Great presenters versus great performers. Sometimes they're the same, rarely. There are people that are very good politicians. And they look good, they talk right, they say all the right things, they make you feel good, the bosses feel good, they promise a lot, and they really give good presentations. It's kind of like a great movie. Great performers sometimes aren't very good at presenting or communicating, or they refuse to. The old term was brown nose or whatever, build a relationship, and they can get lost in an organization a little bit. And again, people say, well, Lumley, you are just looking for guys who could help you fix it. I would think any leader would want people who can do a really good job, regardless of whether they're a good presenter, politician, or not. I found it was easier to teach a great performer how to be a good presenter than a great presenter how to be a good performer.
This is the Alden Report.
I'm super excited about our latest program. Look, we've been on television for close to 20 years, literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives. We've created millionaires. If you've ever watched television, you've most likely seen me on television, not dressed like this, but in a suit and in a tie. Listen, we've re-engineered the process. We're allowing people, a small group of people, whether you're an author, whether you're a business coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a program or a service that you feel as though that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and you want to up-level your game. You know, you're tired of what's going on social media. You're tired of AI is not kicking in. You're tired of all the money that you spent and you're not seeing any return. You're tired of all these fraudsters out there that tell you they're going to put you in Huffington Post or USA Today or Forbes, and it's nothing just but a joke. You want to be in front of millions of people every single day all over the country. Folks, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've re-engineered the process. We've made it possible for the average everyday person to participate in this. If you want to up-level your game, if you truly want to build your profile, if you truly want to get in front of millions of people every single day, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. See it on the bottom of the screen. At Mike Alden, put TV in the message, and I will get back to you personally and see if you're a good fit for us. Again, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. Send me the message TV, and we'll see if you're a good fit.
This is the Alden Report.
All right, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Bay Studios. Of course, I'm rocking my Wicked Happy hat. It's freezing out here. I got my 99-cent glasses, and I'm super excited for my next guest. My next guest is a Wall Street Journal, USA Today best-selling author. He's the author of a book that the title is, if you know anything about me and books, the title is super sexy, and the title is It's Impossible to Commit to Maybe. This guy has done things at levels that most of us dream about. He's also what we call a turnaround expert, and I've also appointed him a mentor of mine. Please help me welcome Dave Lumley. Dave, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, well, thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
So you're out in California, and I'm here in Beverly, Massachusetts. It's freezing. I think you're in Montecito, which is a beautiful area. So I don't know. I think we were talking earlier. I'd like to switch places with you, but you know, for now, we'll keep it as is. So you wrote this book. It's Impossible to Commit to Maybe. That's kind of how you and I met. But if you could, you know, let's just kind of start with your career in your kind of journey, you know, post college. Like what was your first gig? How did you start to get involved in business and also the world of entrepreneurship?
Well, it's like most people, it's not a straight path. And I feel your pain, but I've lived in Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Colorado twice. So I've been there.
Right.
How did it start? You know, I was going to be a journalist, and I made money in high school and college doing that. And I went to Northwestern graduate school, started a magazine. I thought that was going to be great. And I always wanted to write a book, like most of us think about that. And then I found out in late 70s that journalists didn't make too much money. And I got a chance to go in a PR firm at firm, and I learned a lot, got to working on stuff. And in there, it dawned on me that some of the things you learn in journalism, how to organize, how to get your point across, how to talk, how to write, was pretty critical for an executive in business to be successful. And so after a while being in that business, it was clear that I thought, boy, I'd rather be on the side where you have a little more say in what's going on with the company and the customers and stuff. And I moved into an industrial company, and I learned a bunch there and had some smart people. And then I was about 29. I got a call from a guy who said, hey, PepsiCo owns Wilson Sporting Goods, and I think we have a job for you over there. You can use your PR and your advertising and marketing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I went to Wilson Sporting Goods, and I met all the sports stars and then some, and dealt with all the leagues and learned a lot there. I was there 10 years, and I had a chance to move up, like today they call it a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. That wasn't the term. I did that. And got a chance to run the golf division and learned a lot about sales. Some stuff in the book about that, about how you got to learn how to deal with a lot of egos and politics. So I learned a lot there. And then we were a turnaround. I mean, Pepsi's view of things and how the sporting goods industry worked were not the same. And so we had to rebuild, and we did that. We sold to one of the first venture capitalist guys, Bill Simon, U.S. Treasury Secretary, Westray Capital. And right away, early, we learned what it was like to have someone own you who had different goals than you.
So, all right. So at that point, so you're in your what, like late 20s, early 30s?
Yeah, I'm like 28, 29, yeah.
So, when, we'll talk a lot again about, kind of what you've done, and you've been CEO of multiple businesses and companies, and turned them around and just done some amazing things. But as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, I think a lot of people, when they see your success and the things you've done, and it's all again in your book, they might think that it just kind of happens. And I think you talk a little bit about that in your book as well. You truly climbed the ranks, right? It didn't just happen for you.
Yeah, I could have never imagined that I would make $1 million in my whole career, more or less what I had the opportunity to make. And clearly, when I was 29, I would have signed up right then,
right?
To retire with $1 million. I think what I learned there, and I had some good mentors there, and luckily I had a strong father and mentors who taught me about, sales is the game. I mean, you learn everything in sales. You got to do it. And, back then, and even now, I think sales is a little dirty word. Guys get MBAs, financial degrees. They all want to be investment bankers. They're all going to make big money. But you really don't know how a company works until you got to get the product, introduce it, price it, have a customer take it, have a consumer buy it. And it's there where my career changed. And being under pressure, I learned that human beings really don't do anything till they have to.
Yeah. Right.
And that was especially true there. And when your company's under siege and you can go down and everything you have is gone, you learn to decide, you learn to get on with it, or you don't, and you're gone, right? And the company's gone. And that's kind of what happened at Wilson. We were right up against it. A Black Friday back then happened, and our stock offering failed, and it was going to be over. So we had to find someone to buy the company, but we had to learn how to run it. And it's there I came up with, I think it's a chapter in my book I call Chaos as an Opportunity.
That's what I was going to go right to that.
Yeah, I mean, people always say, well, God, how'd you do this? Well, I was born in a very humble family. I was the first one to even go to college, more or less grad school, and I borrowed all that money. And chaos, though. And I think even my dad told me, you go to where there's a problem, you're going to learn. And I did. I put my hand up. I said, hey, give me a chance to do the golf division. Give me a chance to go with the Sony Wilson joint venture that they wanted out. Pepsi sent me to do that. And I went to all the bad jobs, right? But it was there I really learned how to communicate, get people to work together and do things. And, people said, oh, gosh, how'd you do all those turnarounds, all successful? I said, you do them one at a time and you learn from your mistakes, because there's no class called turnaround.
Right. So it's really interesting when you talk about that in your chapter about chaos. I think it's chaos equals opportunity or something like that. And I think it's somewhat of a contrarian view for a lot of people, especially in the corporate world. And again, I know you talk about this in the book where you've got that MBA, and I know you talk about that as well, and you have this cush job. But you were presented with these opportunities where a lot of people would say, no way, I don't want to touch that. When you first were in, well, I guess with Wilson, it was like it just happened to you, right? But then
Right.
but later on, you invited this stuff. You said, I'll
Right.
do this.
I kept signing up for it, right? And you can think, in business, there's examples of guys who have been successful at that. In sports, there's head coaches who are successful at that. Even in families, certain family members are better at putting things back together. I think I had this drive. I actually enjoyed fixing things. I like the challenge. I like to be able to decide fast. To put together people who were good at that. And there's nothing wrong with people who aren't good at turnarounds. I mean, if you're running Coca-Cola, the best thing you can do is not make a mistake.
Right.
Right. And that's great. But I didn't really enjoy that as much as I enjoyed, boom, we've got it right now.
But isn't it stressful? And, again, we're talking about chaos, but I mean, isn't it stressful and scary and all those things that people try to avoid, even though you're right?
Well, it is stressful.
Are you a masochist? Is what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, it's anything like, I'm certainly not a doctor, but you think about surgeons, right? And there's the guys who are great in the ER because they love right now, they're in control, we can get it fixed. And there's a great satisfaction in that. There's other people that are very good at keeping the status quo. And frankly, most people are gravitate towards that. But in my case, that's what I like to do. And the more success you have at it and the new challenges each time. But at the end of the day, it's still about leadership and getting people to believe and trust you and execute. It's really not any different than a company doing very well. Although you can see today, there's examples everywhere from Apple running well, and then they had to change, they had to bring in a new guy. Look what's happened to Twitter. Look what's happened to Tesla. I mean, one person can have a dramatic input on a company of any size, of any size. Now, of course, the more you can influence it, the better, but sometimes it's not the leader who's not so good. It could be the owners, or it could be a certain manager. But I enjoyed it because what I didn't enjoy was the slow, prodding, red tape, political game. Let's all just not do anything to screw things up, which is really what a board of directors is supposed to do, right? But I really enjoyed that. And after Wilson, I had the chance at Outboard Marine, which was, most people would know that as Johnson Everett Outboards and Chris Craft boats and all that. And again, the same thing. They're like, Jesus, what are we going to do here? How are we going to solve these problems? And again, I learned more there.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So again, the title of your book, It's Impossible to Commit to Maybe. I think anybody who's in business, I know that you really think that this book can help managers and middle managers and people, but I've read it and I think I love the way how you break it down too. I think you have like 50 something chapters, so it's fairly easy to read. Each chapter is somewhat independent of each other, so you can kind of learn from those things. But so let's talk about the evaluation process for when you go from your first kind of big opportunity to Outboard Motor. What is it called? What was the name of the business?
It was called Outboard Marine Corporation.
Outboard Marine. So when you're presented with this opportunity where they come to you and say, or I don't know how it happened, I'm guessing they recruited you somehow. What sort of questions are you asking? Because you talk about asking the hard questions in your book, but in that scenario and that dynamic where you're not there yet, what sort of questions are you asking? Like, are you opening up the hood and looking underneath and trying to find the skeletons and the bodies? Like how much do you really know before you get in? And then a follow up to that, I'm sure is there's been scenarios where you've got in and you're like, shit, I can't believe what I just found.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's start with the second part for a minute. That's every job, right? And my great grandmother always said, she was in business way back in the day, she said, there's a reason that job's open. You better find out why, right? But it's never what you think, right? You can get close to it, and there's ways to do that. I talk about it in the book. There's a lot of people you can talk to. including the person who had the job before you, and the person who had the job before that, and people who's on the board, or people, their customers, their suppliers, their competitors. If you do the work, you should have a pretty good idea of what you're getting into. I mean, I made a joke that people plan their vacations better than they plan their job moves sometimes, right? Oh gosh, they want me. I'm going to make 10 grand more. I can't wait to go. Well, you better get to know where you're going, right? I made a joke. There was a reason they had scouts in the Old West to go find out what was in the valley before you go riding into the valley.
Right.
But on the first part, you say, well, how can you evaluate that? There's always the financials. If it's a public company, you can get into. There's the things I just talked about all the people you can talk to about it, and you should, right? And I would always ask to speak to not only who I was going to report to, but some of the contemporaries of that person, and of course the top person, if I could, or a board member. And I would ask things like, and people say, oh, those are standard questions. People don't ask this. What's working now? What's not working now? Where would you like this job or this company to be in a year, 5 years, right? Because when you make a big career move and you're going to go into something, you don't think about the first year. I mean, unless you're in a complete bankruptcy, obviously the first year. But where is it going? I mean, is that company going to be around? What if you joined a record company a year before? Well, we call it the iPhone now, but it was the iPod, right? I mean, so you got to be out in that. But you can ask the questions, you can do the research, and you can get a pretty good understanding of where it's going to be. But again, it comes down to people.
Is it? Was there ever a time to, like in the tipping point, Malcolm Gladwell talks about how humans, the human psyche sometimes overlooks the things that we know we should be looking for because they want something so much, right? And so they overlook the thing that's really staring them in the face. So in the scenario of when you go to this new opportunity, I'm guessing there was a great compensation package. It probably looked great for your family, all that other stuff. Is it difficult to kind of balance that, knowing that, hey, I'm going to go to this new thing where I'm probably going to make a lot of money, but I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't also want to box myself out of that job. Is it a delicate kind of balance in your own brain? And
yeah, it really is. And the more times you do it, the better you get at it, much like life. But I mean, I like to give a lot of analogies in life. I would think about that could be in a romantic situation, right? Man, woman, man, doesn't matter. You should have learned things like that in your life right there. And I think the job thing is very similar. More money is a blinding deal, or emotional departures, meaning I just want out of here. I don't care. And right. I'm going to show them, and I'm going to burn. I have a whole chapter on how to leave your job the right way, because believe it or not, everyone you work there is going to be part of your life till you're done.
Right.
And they're going to find them, and they're going to talk to them, the recruiters or other companies. So don't ever think that, I'm going to burn this place down and I'm going to get the old guy or the gal. That you can't do that. But those type of things are just something that you have to put the time and effort into, and you learn in time. But again, spend the time with other people, talking, listening, and getting part of it. I knew I liked doing that after the first time. Most people don't like doing what they went through. They went through it once, it's enough. They were worried, are they going to get fired? Is their company going to be sold? Are they not going to make their bonus? I mean, what's going to happen? And my message is the same. All that's going to happen unless you do a really good job and do it together. I mean, no company is foolproof. No job is forever. And that's a big learning, is that unless the employer and the job is as committed to you as you are to them, then you are in a foolish situation, just like you said. Don't rush in, and make sure that that's there if you can. And most of business comes down to trust. I mean, trust all the way down the line. I mean, even as a consumer, there's certain brands you trust more than others. You just do, especially in food.
When you talk about trust too, when you're finally you come to that point where you are going to make that decision, people always say, trust your gut, is there, do you develop, like, I guess, almost like an instinct that you say, what, I've seen this before. I know what's going to happen.
Well, actually, again, I don't want to keep referencing the book, but it's the best way I can do it, because the book, you're right, is all different stories and different learning. So you don't have to read it in order. You just
Well, we are talking about, you know what's a great little segue. You know, before you actually answer that, we're talking about trust and trusting your own instinct. Again, if you're listening up until this point, we are on with Dave Lumley. He is the author of the book, which is titled "It's Impossible to Commit to Maybe." We're going to talk about also how we came up with that title, which is just a great title in and of itself, and really what it means. And by the way, just by meeting David, you know, almost I think a couple of years ago, I've kind of indoctrinated a lot of the things that he's taught me in his book as well. So if you'd like some more information about Dave, you can just go to davidrlumley.com. From there, you can also connect with him right on Instagram. He's more active, or the most active, on LinkedIn, as he probably should be, for what he's doing these days. So again, so if you want some more information, go to davidrlumley.com. And you can also pick up the book anywhere where books are available. You know, the title is a great title, but I always like to learn from people that have actually done it and even continue to this day do great things. So make sure you check them out. So trusting your instinct, right?
Well, let's go back to that. Of course, you have to feel comfortable, right? But you may not know. You could be clouded. You could be so upset you just want to leave, or just so blinded by money, or and a lot of times you're too blinded by the money or whatever you think you're going to get in stock and stock options. You don't check that out well enough. Okay. So 100,000 stock options for a company that's stock hasn't moved for 5 years, unless there's some dramatic, still is nothing. All right. It doesn't mean anything. So one of the things I put into place was, I call it a life team, right? And that could be a couple mentors of yours, some people you've worked with, your spouse, maybe in my case, my dad was on my life team. And I would run the scenarios through them. I'd say, what do you think of this? Here's what I think. What do you think? What's your experience? And I'd always learn something in that. And if you didn't get through the gauntlet with pretty much 75% positive, you know, then I went back and looked at it again, right?
Right.
Because you are blinded by that. There's no doubt about it. The very fact that you're looking for a new job, or you've been open to it, you're already in an emotional state, right? You're already in a state where you're not happy, right? This thing about, oh, I love my job and they stole me away. Rarely have I ever seen that happen. Rarely.
Right.
So it's having people around you trust to a certain extent. But again, I think you've made a good point. People who have been there. I'm not saying that someone can't run a company who's never been in sales, marketing, manufacturing. You know, they came from HR, they came from a PE firm, or I'm not saying they can't be successful. I just don't think they have a chance as being as successful, right? Unless you've learned how to do those steps.
Well, you know, we're talking about, you know, making a decision, and I think there's a lot of elements in your book that really is talking about making decisions for virtually every part of not only business but life. But when people are I find that so many people have difficulty in making decisions because of the fear of missing out, right? FOMO, they call it these days, right? Has there ever been an opportunity that came your way that you walked away from or didn't, and you were really conflicted about maybe you should have taken it and you didn't?
Yes. And I reference that too. I was fortunate that throughout my career, every move I made went to a bigger company. Usually you start big and you go to smaller companies. They're both well, because at the end of the day, how much money did you make and how well did the company do? Some $100 million companies make more money than $10 billion companies, right? But that conflict was very interesting. I had been the CEO at my last job for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And we were doing quite well. We had a very challenging ownership structure where we had a board of directors and we were a public company, but we had one group that owned over 50% of the stock. So obviously they had tremendous input and direction. And then they sold to another group, a board above them, who controlled them. So in an odd way, we had 2 boards of directors, but they were both financially driven organizations. So they have a more short-term view, right? You have X amount of years, we have our money in, we want to get our money out. When you run a company, especially a public company, or you're part of it, you've got to keep the company going You should be investing in the company, not just stock buybacks. I'm not saying they did that. I'm just giving it in general. So I had a chance at a company, again, bigger than ours at a time. I think we were 5 billion. It was an associated one. And I was, like I've just said here, I was like, well, I'm not sure this is the right structure for me long term. And it required a move. So I interviewed with the board several times, and I had a chance to do it. But they had a view of how long I should be there and what the strategy should be. And I said, well, my strategy would be different. I'm going to tell you the truth. And frankly, the guy you're letting go is try to execute the very strategy you want to stay with. And I believe this would be the new strategy. Now, normally you wouldn't be that straightforward. Normally you'd go along and try to change it later, but that was never been my style, because I've always been in the platform's burning, right? We don't have time for that. And I told him exactly what I thought. And 2/3 of the board really thought I was the guy they needed, and a couple guys wanted to tape the old way. And they said, well, we really want you to do it this way if you do it. I said, well, then there's no reason for me to come. That's not me. You should hire the internal guy. I said, I would even train the internal guy if you want, but I am not going to do. I don't believe this is what the approach. And of course, you think a lot about that, because at the time, but again, I used the life team. I found a mentor of mine who was probably the toughest mentor I had. He was a former nuclear submarine commander. He was the chairman at one of the companies I worked at. And he came down from his ranch, and we had a 3-hour lunch in Park City. And he gave me some very straightforward advice. Then he was right. And frankly, in the end, that's what I did. And as he pointed out years later, I had made a hell of a lot more money staying and doing what I was doing than leaving in that case. But that was probably the only time in my life I ever thought, boy, maybe I should have gone, But once it was done and I went back, it was good, because so that experience alone can make you feel better and can get you redialed in. It's funny, there's something online in LinkedIn now that they've written this big book. I think it's one of the big search firms about CEOs and that. And they were talking about the lifespan of a CEO. And, some guys never leave. I would have to say it's about 5 years. And I think after 5 years, you get set in. You might lose touch a little bit. Doesn't mean you can't be more than 5 years. And of course, this is a turnaround guy. So I was never anywhere more than 3 to 5 years at the very end. So, but these are things you have to know about yourself and the situation.
So the title, it's impossible to commit to maybe. When I first heard it, when you and I first, kind of met over the phone, I think that, from a marketing standpoint, I just thought it was amazing. And it's really, for me, and we'll talk a little bit about how it's impacted me and my business, but let's talk about, where did this come from, this title, and what does it really mean?
Well, these type of stories, everyone thinks it was, some think tank at Northwestern University, or, it was 20 authors got together and did a survey and the marketplace said this. I think throughout your life, especially when you're young, you're trying to learn, is this right? Is that wrong? Did I do the right thing? And a lot of people are going to tell you, don't do this, don't do that, be this, be that way. And you've got to really be yourself, right? And as I was going through business, again, I was 29 or 30 years old. In my personal life, I was separated, and I got divorced, and I met a woman that was just fantastic. But I was in that state that you can all be in. Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready to do this. I'm not sure. The last one didn't work out so well. So you get gun shy. You're not sure. And that was great. And she went along and she supported me. It was fantastic. But it took a little too long. And, as a human being, in business, you can do this too. You think it just keeps going along and it'll be okay. Well, things just don't ever stay the same. They get better, they get worse. In my career, I always came after things got worse. I made a joke. And she just looked at me one day and said, I love you and I'm going to miss you. And she meant it. She is gone. And I remember my dad was pretty black and white, South Side Chicago guy, motorcycle guy, went in the Air Force at 18, life to him was it's black, it's white, it works, it doesn't. Let's get on with it. And you could play a whole round of golf with the guy, ask for advice, and maybe you had 10 minutes. So did that. I told him the story, and he said, well, let's talk about it when we're done playing golf. You know how that is. And we're putting the golf stuff in the car because he didn't want to pay the fancy prices at a good, place. And I told him the story, and he just listened for a minute. He said, well, you love this girl. I go, yeah. You've been through all this stuff with her. Yeah. He goes, uh-huh. Well, you're asking her to commit to maybe, maybe this is going to go somewhere. And it's impossible to commit to maybe. Put the things in, got the car, went home. And I was like, it took me like a couple hours for that to sink in. And the more I thought about it throughout my whole life, and I think most people's lives, you're going to go to this school or not? Going to take this job or not? You're going to buy this car or not? Are you going to be there for the guys if you tell them at 10 o'clock at the play? Well, the people who commit to do that, then other people commit. It works pretty good. But if everything's a big maybe, nothing goes anywhere, right? So if you think about it, I think of impossible to commit to maybe is basically our political system. We never know what's going to happen, right? But if you're running a company or a family and you say something, you got to do what you say when you say it. And if you do, they will. And then you build trust. Now, you may not like it. It may not be the best deal you ever made when you said it. But once you build that level of commitment and trust, you can get through any turnaround. You can get through anything.
So I love that story, and I'm so glad you told it. But when I think about your book, you talk about sticking to the plan, and you tell the story about the fighter pilots and separating, and but then also you talk about having a plan B. So it's somewhat, to me, could be, some people might interpret that as kind of almost committing
Good
to maybe,
point.
right? So talk about, making a decision, sticking to the decision, but at the same time, having that plan B and what that really means.
Yeah. And when I talk about the book, I usually talk as high level as I can because I want the people, because everyone's going to say just what you said. Oh, but what about all this? Right? Oh, what about all that?
That's why you're here, Dave.
I know. And when I say I committed to something, didn't mean I always had a plan B. If I said, look, we're going to keep this plan open and make it work, but if it doesn't, in my mind, I had a plan B. It's the very essence of why every company should have at least dual suppliers. And I could write a whole book on all the nightmares from having single source supply. Oh, we had no choice. You always have a choice. You just didn't want to pay more money or go through the effort. You have to. And that's how I viewed my whole life. What is plan B? And, there's tons of sports analogies about we have a strategy, we're going to stick to it. But as Mike Tyson said, if once you hit someone in the face, they went down, they needed a new plan, right? But
everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
That's right. To me, that is just a version of the plan, right? If the plan
what do you say to the people though? These people drive me crazy, and I agree with you, especially as a lawyer too. And so it's like we're like A, B, C, D, E, F. These people will say, "Well, you can't be successful in life if you have a plan B." And you hear people say this all the time. Actors will say, "Oh, I moved out to LA and I had no backup plan. I was only going to be an actor, or I was only going to do this. I was only going to do that. I had no plan B." To me, I think that's bullshit, but maybe expand on it a little bit more eloquently for our viewers and listeners, really why a plan B is necessary and the fact that you can be successful and have a plan B at the same time. Or am I just not interpreting this properly?
Well, let's look at it two ways, a very simple example and a big example. A very simple example is we're selling batteries to Walmart. And we're doing fantastic. But my plan B was I wanted to get into Home Depot as well. My plan B was I'm going to work quietly in the background with their CEO for as many years as it takes, so someday I can get in there. Well, why is that important? There's two things about that. One, it could replace volume we're going to lost. And I knew that the big retailer wouldn't like that it was in the other one. But unless I could overcome a problem where I had been told they were never going to buy our batteries again for an incident that happened before I was even there. So plan B was Home Depot. And I worked on it for 4 years. And I went to at least 7 meetings with the CEO. And finally, it happened. And luckily it did, because we did lose some of the volume at that big retailer. So that is a way that you don't have to tell everyone, right? But it's a plan B. You could say, well, that's just finding a different, but it's a plan B. Because a lot of people, all their business is on Amazon, or all their business is, because the fad is everyone's losing weight.
A single point of failure, they call it, right?
Yes. So even in the business you were in, all these supplements were working, but you could have been working on another one, right? Could have looked out and said, hey, maybe the new thing is going to be this, and have it there. It's kind of like electric batteries today. We know they're going to run out of batteries. Plan B is the hydrogen. Is that going to work? Or is something else going to work? Seawater, doesn't matter. You should be working on that. On a big way, plan B is the company's not working. We're going to sell off these divisions and it's going to save us. Otherwise, our debt and our interest is going to crush us. I lived through that 3 times. In each case, it didn't happen right, because people know when you have to sell a division.
In
So
your
they're
book,
not
you talk about the importance of having a plan B as far as timing as well, right? You say
Yes.
that if you don't have a plan B and you realize that things, plan A essentially doesn't work, and then you try to get it together after plan A is not working, now you're in a really bad spot. Versus,
Yeah, it's too late. It's
Yeah.
too late. So in the case of where we were one corporation are trying to sell these divisions, my plan B was to cut the size of those divisions in half, reorganize them, merge them, which is what we did. They didn't like it. Everyone really difficult. End up making more money and adding value to the corporation. More difficult, but I had that figured out, and we were ready when the other thing did not happen. So plan B can be as much as you double book your airline flights. You have to be in Florida by 8 a.m. on June 4th, and you booked your one flight. Well, I also sometimes booked another one on a different airline where they didn't have. So if I had to, I went that way, or went by train or whatever. You don't do it in every single thing in your life, but in the critical elements of it. Now, some people say, oh, well, you don't do that in your marriage. Well, no, you shouldn't do it in your marriage. Your plan B should be, you're going to counseling.
right.
But some guys blame that, their divorce on plan B. Well, they didn't have a plan B. They had no plan. Right. But all these things just are talking about what are the things you can do to get better in what you're doing to run a company, or to run your job, or to move up. And all these things matter.
I want to stay on this plan B thing for a little bit. Again, we're on with Dave Lumley. He's the author of It's Impossible to Commit to Maybe. I met him, I think almost 2 years ago. And I tell you, his book has changed my life. It's actually changed my business. If you're listening to him right now, this guy has done it and he continues to do it. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. If you want more information about Dave, you can go to David R. Lumley. It's LUMLEY.com. You can also check him out on Instagram, and he's most active on LinkedIn as well. You go to his website, you can kind of get to all that stuff. And of course, pick up the book. The book's available where books are sold. And what I like about the book, I said there's 50 chapters. There's like 70 chapters, but they're really small. You can break them down. Each kind of section has its own learning experience in there. And I believe if you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're working for a business, or if you want to be in business, this is one of those books that you can just really get something out of. There's a lot of books out there that is a lot of theory. This book is all practical knowledge of stuff that he's actually done and gives really sound advice. So again, it's impossible to commit to maybe. So plan B, back to what I was saying before, where you hear people say, you can't be successful. Like you can't be like Tom Brady, plan B is not going to be an insurance agent, and the only way he's going to be successful is he was going to be a professional athlete. I'm just using him as an example because we're here in Boston, or other. You hear that, you know, a lot with athletes or performers or things like that. And the one thing that we don't hear about though is the ones that didn't have a plan B and didn't make it. Right? We always hear we'll hear Matthew McConaughey tell a story about, you know, he was going to be an actor and everything's great, but there's millions of others that didn't have a plan B, right? And don't make it. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but
all I would say is that it's great to have a singular goal, especially if you're following your strengths, and to stick with it, and normally you can make it. But most people who don't have a plan B, and most people go way off the course because now they're in a weakened position, right? I'm going to be an actor. You end up being a waiter, right? Or maybe you run a business, maybe you run a restaurant someday. But it depends on how that impacts your life, right? And what you think of yourself, right? You know, this thing about you learn a lot from losing. I think you learn a lot from winning, right? Even if it's a small win, and it gives you the confidence to go forward. Now, that's not to say that your life or career can't take different turns to get to where you're going. I mean, I thought I was going to be a journalist. I ended up being a business CEO. But that's what happened. I ended up as a journalist or a writer, right? So you have the opportunity to revisit some of those things. Like, you know, I've always said that it's not over till it's over. You can build a whole new career at 50, 60, 70 years old. You can do something completely new if you want to. But just having the security that you have a fallback position. Now, others are going to say, oh, now that you have the fallback or the trust fund or the extra money, you're not going to try as hard. Well, maybe. But it's not about that. It's about, here's what I want to do. Here's the different variations of it I can do to get there, right?
Because nothing ever works out the way you plan it, no matter what, right?
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's why even sports teams have halftime.
Right.
I mean, what, did they think they dreamed up halftime because they needed halftime? They needed to say, what's not working and what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
that's it.
And to sell some more beer and food. I mean, that's about it, right?
Right.
Run some more commercials. And it's good to have a halftime in your life.
See, that makes total sense to me. I'm not a big sports guy, even though you and I both played college ball and stuff, but that makes total sense to me. That's what halftime's for. They reevaluate, they change up the plan. They might even throw the original plan out the window because of plan A wasn't working.
I mean, to this day, there are certain mentors or guys I work with, I'll call and say, geez, you know, even writing the book, I sent some very sensitive chapters, which most are not in the book. Some guys I really respect, and they said, you know, that's a great chapter. It's really interesting. It's really going to get you a lot of attention. Is that your goal? Because it's going to get you the wrong kind of attention. And sorry about that. Someone's printing. Maybe it's orders for the book.
That's it. Big orders coming in.
And I cut those chapters. But again, that's because you check it out. You know, you ask people. And other things I changed. I softened. There was no reason to say some of the things I was saying to get my point across. And you can do that in your life too.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, again, there's so many things in the book, and you know, we don't have a ton of time. But one of the things that I love everything about it. But one thing I think you and I have I have a real pet peeve about when you talk about performers and presenters. You know, as a salesperson myself, and you as well, I think I could sell ice to Eskimos if I needed to. But the key is really the performers, right? You said in your talk a little bit about the difference and also the people that can do both and why it's important.
Well, again, people will say, well, you know, Lumley, you come from turnarounds, you come from under siege, you got to make quick decisions, you got to get everyone to believe in you, you got to get it executed. But most companies aren't in that situation. I would argue most companies are in that situation. They just got their eyes closed because around the corner, that's why they missed that year. Most companies I went to, most people hadn't made bonus in 3, 4, 5 years in a row. And they thought they had a good job. I said, well, why are you here? What do you mean? Well, your stock's not worth anything. You get a salary. You have a major bonus. You're not winning. You have to go forward. And the reason I tell you this story is great presenters versus great performers. Sometimes they're the same, rarely. There are people that are very good politicians. And they look good, they talk right, they say all the right things, they make you feel good, the bosses feel good, they promise a lot, and they really give good presentations. It's kind of like a great movie. And when you watch movies that are so entertaining, but that would never happen in the movie. You can't do all that stuff in 4 hours. You can't go around the moon, shoot down 48 guys, and get the girl in 10 minutes. It's just pretty fast. Great performers sometimes aren't very good at presenting or communicating, or they refuse to. The old term was brown nose or whatever, build a relationship, and they can get lost in an organization a little bit. And again, people say, well, Lumley, you are just looking for guys who could help you fix it. I would think any leader would want people who can do a really good job, regardless of whether they're a good presenter, politician, or not. I found it was easier to teach a great performer how to be a good presenter than a great presenter how to be a good performer.
Right.
Because they've never had to.
Do you find, or have you found in your career that most people fail on that part of the execution part? Because everybody has an idea and can talk, but when it comes down to actually doing stuff and getting stuff done, did you find in your career as a CEO at multiple companies that there was just a lot of people that just weren't able to perform or execute?
The answer is yes. Now, there's a lot of reasons. There's balanced lifestyles now. There's remote working. There is, we have to do all these things. There's a lot more rules and regulations, which are good, especially in the area of, everything from racism to how minorities are treated, women are treated, white men are treated. All those things are very good for business. I've always been a big believer in that. But most people haven't been in a very stressful situation or don't want to be in a stressful situation. And you can't blame them because they've never done it. But they aren't attracted to that, right? Because it's risky. And most people avoid risk. However, most of the time, by never doing that, you put yourself in a position where you're so weak when it does happen, you don't know how to do it, right? So I would always try to put together a team of unlike people, but all good at something, so they can learn from each other, right? And people didn't like that either. They all want to be with their friends. Well, the problem with 5 friends is you have one person, and I think it's a great opportunity for anyone in business. Chaos is the opportunity to learn how to communicate, go towards challenges, ask for leadership opportunities, surround yourself with people that are better than you. I learned it from a mentor of mine. I call it Russian dolls. And I'm sure everyone goes to that chapter thinking it's going to be some sexy story.
I did.
A Russian doll.
I did. I was disappointed.
I know. But a Russian doll, if you ever had one, there's a bunch of dolls inside that. And that's how you build a relationship or a team or a company. You got to think of yourself as the small doll. And you got to surround yourself with bigger dolls. Because if you think you're the big doll and you hire smaller dolls, your company is little. But if you can hire all people better than you and stuff, like I went out of my way to hire a CPA, proven CFO who was top. It was hard to find that person who wanted to move to Madison, Wisconsin. In fact, it's in my book. It took me a year to recruit the guy. But he's a lot better than me in that. And the same with the guy who ran the pet division. The same with the guy who was a great ops guy. I learned from the ops guy. I learned how to do national sales from a guy who worked for me. And it took me a while to get over that, but not because I was at 36. I thought I knew everything.
Right.
I didn't know anything, right? So that's what I mean by that. When you say that, surround yourself with people who are better than you. Get on that team, learn, listen, be resilient. Because when you are the leader, kind of like a surgeon, it's good that you know what you're doing. It's good you have references and experience.
Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Again, learn from others. Every successful person that I've ever been around is not afraid to surround themselves with people that are smarter than them, better than them in certain things, because they're also confident in their own abilities as well. Again, we've been on with Dave Lumley. I appointed him one of my mentors. I think I texted him. I said, Dave, I want you to be my mentor. And he said, sure, no problem. He's also the author of the book, It's Impossible to Commit to Maybe, Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller. He's done big things. He continues to do big things. And this book really helps people as well. I've read a lot of books about business and success and everything in between. This book is, I believe, something that anybody can pick up and learn from and implement as well. And also what I like about it is the way it's structured. You can literally just open up a chapter and just read that one chapter. The book does have what we call an arc to it, but there's a lot to learn from it. And I like to learn from people that have done it before. Again, if you want some more information about Dave, you can just go to David R. Lumley, and it's LUMLEY.com. That's his website. He's also pretty active on LinkedIn. He's trying to get a little active also on social, more specifically on Instagram. But if you really want to connect with him, learn from him, and even maybe engage him, go to his website, davidrlumley.com. My name is Mike Alden. That's Dave Lumley, and we'll see you soon.
I'm super excited about our latest program. Look, we've been on television for close to 20 years, literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives. We've created millionaires. If you've ever watched television, you've most likely seen me on television, not dressed like this, but in a suit and in a tie. Listen, we've re-engineered the process. We're allowing people, a small group of people, whether you're an author, whether you're a business coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a program or a service that you feel as though that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and you want to up-level your game. You're tired of what's going on social media. You're tired of AI is not kicking in. You're tired of all the money that you spent and you're not seeing any return. You're tired of all these fraudsters out there that tell you they're going to put you in Huffington Post or USA Today or Forbes, and it's nothing but a joke. You want to be in front of millions of people every single day all over the country. Folks, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've re-engineered the process. We've made it possible for the average everyday person to participate in this. If you want to up-level your game, if you truly want to build your profile, if you truly want to get in front of millions of people every single day, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. See it on the bottom of the screen. At Mike Alden, put TV in the message, and I will get back to you personally and see if you're a good fit for us. Again, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. Send me the message TV, and we'll see if you're a good fit.